Welcome to Capital Conversations. It's Tuesday, May 12th, 2015, and tonight I'm joined by Jim Abeler, former legislator for a long-time legislator up here, 16 years.
16 years.
You worked these halls, and now you're working them again.
Yeah.
As a lobbyist.
As a lobbyist.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that transition.
Same neighborhood.
What the emotional part?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Skip
the. I may have to do a little weeping, but same neighborhood, different dialect.
Okay.
And it is different in the hallway.
Yeah.
And what people don't realize is everybody winds up there someday.
Yeah.
In the case of Willard Munger, they carried him through the hallway, but others, when you retire or get defeated, very often members want to come back and worry about some particular task. And so I never thought I would be a lobbyist. It was the last thing on my mind. And ran for the U.S. Senate, and people weren't buying what I was selling.
Yeah.
Still, I think that was an error on their part, but so be it. And so making a decision, you wind up in a new adventure, and so my adventure is to do good from the hallways.
Well, let's face it, you had two things going against you in that Senate race. One, you're kind of a moderate Republican, and two, the money arrayed against you was pretty vast. There was a pretty big war. Yeah. I think, what did you do, rent a microbus? I don't know what you were doing.
We had an ambulance.
And the ambulance, that's
serious
right.
business on
an ambulance, serious
business. Over
business.
on the state, 650 places.
That's right. I remember you saying that at the convention.
We have an amazing state, by the way. You just got to love Minnesota and the people.
Well, let me ask you a couple of questions about the transition back to that. So for the cynical people out there who are like, geez, all our politicians become lobbyists because that's the quick pathway to money. And you know, talk a little bit about, people that don't know you, Jim Abeler is also a chiropractor by trade, right? Probably a little bit more lucrative than wandering the hall working pro bono up here at the Capitol. But tell people about maybe some misnomers there.
Well, fortunately, some people actually do hire me and pay. I do have 6 pro bono accounts on top of the rest of mine, and so.
Pro bono meaning absolutely free.
Yeah, out of the goodness of our heart.
That's right.
And so, in my view, you got to love what you're doing and want to serve people.
Yeah.
And if you serve people well enough, then you can make some money and make a living at it.
Sure.
I do have another day job, which I have spent a little more time at. But it's hard to put it down. It's hard not to be part of helping the process to go better. And I think I'm giving some benefit from the hallway. It is a different perspective, though.
Yeah, for sure. And I want to talk a little bit about what gets into you. What's in here that you think drives people to want to stay that connected to things that, because it's pretty humbling. To go from, I remember you were the chair of the Health and Human Services Committee for the Republicans just a couple of years ago, and there was lines out your office door on a day-to-day basis.
And my jokes were funnier, too.
Well,
people laughed.
I still laugh.
Now they don't even listen to the jokes now.
They're not laughing at you, Jim.
Yeah.
They're laughing with you. Yeah. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about, what is it that you think drives people to take that humbling road in some way? Apart from the money piece.
Yeah. Well, I think you have to address the money. There is money in politics, but not on the floor here, because they make a pretty low pay. But there's a lot of money around politics. We spend nominally $40 billion in a biennium and maybe $70 billion all funds in a biennium out of state functions. So people want to get a piece of that money. And so to invest $10,000, $100,000, $1 million to get their taste is not unreasonable. And some people just come for the money. And good for them, it's a job, and if they can be successful. But I do it, frankly, out of passion for the work, and I still want to make a difference. I ran for office in the beginning to make a difference, and so I still want to do that. And so I'm able to help kids with autism and seniors in nursing homes, and the Cambodians and some Somalis and some foreign trained doctors who want to come and help their countrymen stay well. So that's what drives me, and so I get up in the morning and do my best to make a difference here.
Mm-hmm. Well, that altruism that you had when you came here 17 years ago as a freshman legislator, what's changed about that? Has there been an injection of pragmatism somewhere along the line? How's that, looking back, how does that all play out for you?
Well, if you're not too careful, you can go from pragmatic to cynic real quick.
Mm-hmm.
If you see that happen, I have to go. I want to be the naive optimist. And so I know better. I'm not I'm not a schoolgirl anymore.
Yeah.
In, what I expect. But still, I want to see the best in people. I want to see quality work go, and I have to forever fight against the temptation to throw back mean for mean, you know, and unkindness for lies. And so I think I can kind of model that. Maybe that's part of my job. But I know I'm making a difference for the groups I'm helping too, and I'm happy about that.
Well, let's talk about a couple other things. And maybe we'll go into a more personal area, and then we can get into kind of what's going on up here right now. But let's talk about, you know, you've had some traumatic events in your life recently. You lost your son a few years back. How did that change you as a person, as a legislator, your viewpoints? What do you think that, now that you've had a chance to kind of put some time between the event and...
Yeah, 2011 was quite a year. That was the year we had to do all the budget work and reduce the spending, and that was shaping in itself. And then come August, and my son, or September, excuse me, and my son passed away through a seizure, which was unexpected. And so those things do shape you. And I think you can choose to shake your fist and be bitter and blame everybody you can blame. But for some reason, I didn't go there. And my faith seems stronger. And I don't know why, to tell you the truth. I pray every day. I miss him every day. And I think it's helped make me a better person to help somebody else. Because if you look just in, then you just see yourself. But then realizing now a lot of people have suffered losses. Everybody I know has suffered a loss of some sort. Be it a loved one or a job or some dream. And so how do we do well on earth here as we kind of grieve together and pray to God for the help to get through the day? And so that's how I do it. And it's made me better and able to understand. And not that I would ever choose it, but suffering a loss like that, people know, well, it makes you credible. You know, and like the Velveteen Rabbit, I think we're all in the process of becoming real. And so when you come fresh out of the box, you got the nice ears and the buttons and they're shiny. But that's not a real rabbit. And the Velveteen Rabbit was a stuffed rabbit for a long time, but reality is more of that. And you can't stop it from happening. And so we have to embrace it, I think. And along the way to do good here in the hallways, you do good in your way by telling people what's going on and begging them to be engaged. And to look after one of the finest states government in the country, and certainly the best country in the world. And so we all make a difference a little bit.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good story. Let's talk a little bit about, thanks for sharing that. I know it's not the easiest thing to talk about. Let's talk about politics in general, not national politics we can leave alone. We know enough about what's going on here. What, we were talking on the way up the stairs, we walked the stairs together on the way up here, and we were talking a little bit about why there's no room for the moderate in politics now, and maybe even at the state level. You were one of 6 legislators to vote to overturn, to support the gas tax, I guess, what was it?
Override
with
the
Palenti,
veto,
you overrode Palenti's veto.
2008, but who's counting?
Well, everybody paid a political price for that. Generally, some through the electorate. I think you suffered a few blows there for, you know, your caucus didn't appreciate that. And anyway, you took a moderate stance that you thought was principled based on what you believed in, not what the party wanted you to toe the line in. Don't see a lot of Republicans and Democrats stepping out of line these days. What's going on? What's changed in your mind, and is there room?
Well, I think it's too bad, and I think what people have to remember is we elect a representative government. And so if they elect both of us to sit down there, we don't have to listen to our constituents at all. You know, that we have no duty to listen to them. They elect us, we get to do as we wish. Fortunately, we are both the type who would be interested in what they thought, and we try to represent the composite of their views, but still, it's a composite. There's the left and the right. And so sometimes I think people think they're elected by the party, and they're represented they're there to represent Keith Downey or Ken Martin on behalf of their particular party. And fewer people go to the caucuses now. And so the party's been taken over by the polar right and polar left. And frankly, the more you get to the polar left and the polar right, the less forgiving you are and the more strident in your beliefs you are. And the less welcome somebody who may disagree with that belief is even felt, they don't feel welcome at the meetings. And that becomes the base that we try to look after. And there's nothing wrong with the base. They all are entitled to their points of view. But they shouldn't get to run everything. They get their voice. But there's 5.4 million people in this state, and not even 100,000 participate in the process. So that's a minor subset. And I think that we lose something in that. I think we get a little poorer government, a little poorer resolution, a little poorer opportunities for the people who would make Minnesota their home, whether they're born here or come as a new American from someplace where they were in crisis.
Yeah.
So I've tried to make a difference about that, and I'd probably still I'd be in big trouble this year, I think, if I were here. So I think it's good I'm helping from the hallway.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure there were many opportunities for you to express that. I know sitting in the long evening committee hearings and stuff like that, I know you always wanted divergent opinions to be heard, and you were, I think, fair with people, and that they appreciated that.
I was very fortunate. We're blessed to be here today. We go to our car, we go to the grocery store. We're not real worried about some band of terrorists coming and shooting up our car. We had the privilege to serve here, and I even had the privilege to be a chair for a couple of years. I got to set the tone in my committee for those 2 years, and I set a tone of respect and inclusiveness, and I help people remember that as a model, because that's what we need, and it's easy to lose it as you circle the wagons and defend your team.
Yeah.
But who I work for and who you work for, and most of the people in Minnesota want us to worry about the state and all the needs the state has. And you can say it's one Minnesota, but really there's probably about 1,000 Minnesotas.
Yeah.
Different cultural subsets, and you want to respect them all and make them feel welcome, because we need them all.
Well, let's talk a little bit about current politics. So the budget negotiations, there's been probably some missteps by both sides in terms of conversation, but the bottom line is, as you mentioned, time is a factor, and like next week's the constitutional deadline. If you don't do it then you're in extra session. Nobody wants to do that, right, politically?
No. Plus they want to start tearing this room apart.
Yeah, they're doing remodeling.
On Tuesday they want to come in and start tearing down the chandeliers and stuff and get going.
Yeah, they got to repair stuff.
But you have to remember brinksmanship. And there was a time when people could negotiate and be respectful, and there was a time that people got deals put together. But I was reading Jefferson's work, and back then people were they still hated each other back then. There were still issues with Jefferson and Adams, and they were commenting about, how badly they got along back then.
Sure,
So rancor in government is nothing new.
Yeah.
But then an orderly closure of work is the hallmark of our U.S. system and our state system. In Iraq, back when Saddam was there was no disorder in the system. Things went smoothly. They got done on time just the way he wanted. And if you didn't like it, not a problem. You would not be there to complain the next time.
Right.
And that's the orderly, smooth way. And then you have the contrast being our disorderly way that eventually resolves. And I prefer the latter than the former.
Sure.
And so the more people weigh in, the more the people watching this show and other ones like it weigh in and talk to their own representatives and themselves get involved. It makes it so much better. So I always tell them to get involved. Come on, we need you.
What about a little insight into what actually happens here toward the end of the session now? I don't know if you were ever invited to the backroom negotiations between the governor and senior leadership. You might have been during the Health and Human Services. What sort of things are going on back there? What deals are being struck, and what kind of horse trading and things like that happen?
Well, the deals aren't going too well today from what I hear.
Yeah. Well, at least in the media.
Yeah, and I kind of know what people are stuck on, and the issue about gas taxes or lowering taxes or having mandatory 4-year-olds going to school and all these. There's always a topic or two topics of the session that becomes the one that defines the session.
Okay.
And we'll see what that winds up being here. It could just be business as usual with a little tweak. People would be happy with that, actually. They don't need a home run all the time. And so there's a bit of a dance. It's the spring dance in May.
Yeah.
And one person says, we want this so bad, and we want this so bad, says the other group. And the governor says, oh no, I want my way. And they do a little dance, and then it's not early enough to get to the real serious work. We're getting pretty close now. And then they'll have a big fight and a big blow up, and then
There'll be press conferences.
somebody will kiss and make, you'll have dueling press conferences. They suck. No, they suck. No, both of them do. And terrible for Minnesota. And
Yeah.
you really want us to be in charge. And no, you never want them in charge.
Right.
And it's just a bad day and a bad bunch of siblings. But then eventually it resolves.
Yeah.
And
That's what I'm interested in.
and
How
when
does
you
it
can get
to
to
that?
to a deal that all sides can endure,
Yeah.
then you can get done. If you're waiting for something
Yes.
you're going to absolutely like,
Yeah,
you're
forget
never
it.
getting here.
Yeah, right.
But you have to endure it. And the problem with the enduring is that's a mature level of enduring. We got a lot of what we wanted. We had to do some horse trading. We had to give up on this. But the people in the hinterlands, the people on the right and the left who are at the polls, find that to be intolerable.
Right. They don't
They
want
sold out.
compromise. Yeah. Right.
And they like nothing better than a disaster. Because then that either side will feed their fundraising and it feeds their ego. Like, we stopped all of their stuff. And it's government. It has to, at the end, it has to go on.
But as you say, there aren't. I mean, the majority probably live somewhere in the 70% in the middle, right?
Oh, absolutely. They want us to work it out, get it
Yeah,
done.
yeah.
It's a surplus, smaller than they think. You know, it's not as good as it is or as bad as it's said to be.
Sure.
But we're cooking along. Things are
Mhm.
better than they were in 2008 and 2009, for sure. And so there's lots to celebrate. And so enjoy the process. Read the B section of the paper. If it makes the front page, it's even better news or
Yeah.
worse news.
Yeah.
You know. So, but people, they need to engage.
Mhm.
They need to have a thought of what they want to tell their legislator. We actually listened. Back when I was one, I actually was interested in what people thought.
Yeah.
And fewer than you think actually weigh in. So, let's celebrate the fact that we're free, that we can worship according to our faith, that we have opportunities for all to do so many things.
Mhm.
Not perfect, there's some broken parts, but a lot to celebrate, and I encourage people in my naive optimism to look at the good and,
Yeah, sure.
and work to make it better.
That makes sense. So, I mean, in terms of the primary sticking points right now, I know gas tax has been talked about.
Yeah.
All-day kindergarten. What are the big issues you're hearing as you?
Well, the big tax cuts.
Big tax cuts, okay.
Republicans want to abolish Minnesota Care. They don't like the
Yeah.
exchange. Shocking news. And
Which I think you were a part of. It was under your, during you.
I was on the conference committee.
Your reign up here that you, yeah.
I voted for it before I voted against it. I tried to go and fix it. I tried to bring people together, and unfortunately, just
Yeah.
as a sidebar, they took almost none of my advice. And had they taken my advice, I would have had a vote for it. And you would have had business leaders and other leaders groups celebrating the exchange. I think it would have worked better. But your mother always said, take the advice of people who know what they're doing.
Mhm.
And I don't always know what I'm doing, but I think that my advice is pretty good a lot of times. But in many advisors comes wisdom. If you listen to a little group
Mhm.
that happens to think just like you won't have enough wisdom to run this place.
Yeah.
And that's why I favor actually divided government, because if you have Republicans and Democrats and whoever the governor is, they have to actually talk and listen and balance each other out and include somebody else's view. And that makes for better government. The successful stories in Minnesota's history have been in times of divided government.
Yeah, I think
when they had to
Minnesotans
come to an
appreciate
agreement.
that. They're always trying
Yeah.
to vote balance up here, you
Yeah.
know. Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah, all right. Well, I'll wrap up here in a couple of minutes, but I wanted to ask you a few more questions. Okay, so now we got an election coming up in 16.
Yeah.
Yeah. Senate, House is going to turn over at the same time. Governor will be up for re-election. We could see a whole new, isn't that right?
No, the governor's
no,
got,
he's done.
He
right?
gets 3 more years.
He gets,
to
that's right, 3 more years.
enjoy
What am I
that.
thinking? Yeah. But anyway, both the House and the Senate will be up
Yeah.
for election. Governor Dayton will be around. He'll be the one,
Yeah.
yeah, constant. But let's talk about, you know, there was a few campaign speeches this year on the floor,
Yeah.
but next year it'll be really intense.
Yeah, it's send us back. We're the ones you want. Never send those guys back. They're
Mhm.
awful. And, you know, and it's almost become a perpetual campaign. And I never liked that part so well.
Yeah.
But it will be next year. Both sides have to pay attention. The Senate will become much more interested in the fate of the people in the hinterlands, and the House is actually always connected to the people. So next year brings a lot, and one thing's for sure, that no one knows how it's going to work out for sure.
Yeah. So when you got up here 16 years ago now,
Yeah, how about
yeah, what did it cost to run your campaign?
that? Oh, 30,000 or something.
$30,000
Yeah.
in the mid 90s or something.
There was some outside money. Yeah, but some of the races now, you're about to give the punchline, right? What was the highest cost race?
I don't know. I'm not.
$500,000.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
$500,000.
I was going
You
to
get a $31,000 job.
Yeah, right.
You can make it up in volume, though.
Why so much money for
If
a
you work here
$31,000
16 years,
job?
you might make $500,000.
Yeah.
Because people want to be in charge.
Yeah, it's not the money, it's the power. Yeah,
Right.
Right.
And it's not, that money didn't come from those people. From the $31,000 guy, it came from the people who wanted that person to get in power.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
with that comes strings, of course.
Yeah, we're going to ask for some favors.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well.
Which creates work for me. You see, it all works out.
Yeah, it's all.
Although, just to,
it's its own ecosystem, I guess.
the cool thing about my accounts is they're almost all David and Goliath. So I get to help the Davids of the world to try to have a shot. And that fits my nature, and
Yeah.
I like that part a lot.
Good. Well, what's next for you? How long are you going to keep this up, or is this just, you know, you're going to
I
sail
don't know.
in
I pray for wisdom and direction, and my direction is to be here today. And, you know, it's funny. I'm told, don't give too much away for free.
Yeah.
And it's all about the annuity. You want to get next year's deal. And I was raised to think that if you do good work, people are going to hire you.
Yeah.
And if you do your best, then that'll work. And if you can serve enough people, you'll make adequate money. And so I'm kind of an oddling that way, I think.
How do your colleagues? I'm interested to know how your colleagues treat you. Because you know your friends from your not so good friends when you're not in the position to do them favors. How's that work now?
Well, some people never were my friends, and that's clear.
Sure.
They're very direct about their disinterest now.
But
which
you
is
can
interesting.
respect that because they were always consistent. They didn't like you back then. Now they
Well,
still
they
don't like
pretended
you.
to like me. So
Oh, they
it's-
did.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
that's different.
So it's all good. So you just do your best.
Yeah.
And they say friends come and go, enemies accumulate. And
Yeah, I guess so.
but you got to focus on the work and on the people that you're serving, and then the rest of it comes along. And you make allies where you can make allies.
Yeah.
And I might be an ally with some lobbyist on something, another thing we're an opponent because
Yeah.
we're representing different groups.
Sure.
And
Makes sense.
the trick is to not make it personal.
Yeah, like
That's harder
Rukavina, he
sometimes.
was,
Yeah.
he didn't make it personal, right?
But that's hard sometimes. So for
Yeah.
some people, it is personal.
Sure.
Hopefully, they rise above that.
Or maybe you get a chance to learn over time. I don't know. Yeah.
It could
Let
happen.
me ask you another question, Jim.
Yeah.
So if you think about that, one more question here before we finish out. If in your 16 years you could go back in time and change a vote, I mean, we had the vote on same-sex marriage, we've had the gas tax vote, you were part of some big budget votes, but very few were like civil rights oriented, like the vote that was taken on the gay marriage thing.
Yeah.
What does your conscience tell you? Would you go back and change any of those votes? Would you do things differently if you had the opportunity? How do you see that stuff now in the perspective of
Yeah.
being out of office?
Well, just generally without dissecting any particular issue, I tried to always vote my conscience, and that got me in trouble sometimes. I think if I did it again, I would be even more uppity. I would be even less well-behaved, and that's what I think I would do. And I think I would even be more effective. You try to pick your fights.
Yeah.
But people commend my work, and I'm happy. I'm peaceful about it. When I walked out the door for the last time, I knew I was walking out the door for the last time. And because I had to leave to go watch one of my sons graduate, and so I gave my goodbye speech early. And Melissa Hortman was nearby. I said, Melissa, would you walk me out the door?
A Democrat, yeah.
Yeah, a Democrat friend of mine. I said, would you walk out the door with me? I don't want to walk out the door alone.
Yeah.
And so I looked, I remember the view, and people were just milling around. We were on a recess.
Yeah.
And so she walked me out.
What did she say to
And
you?
I left.
What did she say to
Oh,
you?
I don't remember that. It was just nice.
Yeah.
Nice to have a longtime friend. We don't agree on everything, but the humanity is there of these people. And so if we remember we're all human,
Yeah.
and we're all people, and God loves us all for the way we are, then you can build on that. And that's what my naive optimism is.
I can't
Taking
help
me
thinking
toward-
you haven't lost some of the politician polish, though, because I've asked you about 3 questions and you've managed to dodge them pretty good. But yeah, so I was just thinking, maybe you thought there was one thing you could go back and change about your time, you know, some kind of vote or
The
whatever.
change would be not
Yeah.
a specific vote that I recall,
Yeah.
but the
But make
gas
more-
tax vote was right. But I think that I would have even been more of a problem to leadership. than
Yeah,
I was.
sure, yeah.
I could have gone there, but I tried to cooperate where I could, and maybe that helped me be effective.
Maybe it's not.
Maybe I pushed it as far as I could go and not
Yeah.
lose it.
Yeah, well, that's just it.
But I
There's a
was
balance.
focused on what I thought was right.
Yeah, good. Well, you've been watching Capital Conversations. I'm Marty Owings. This is Jim Abeler, and we're happy to bring you tonight's program. Session wraps up tomorrow, this week, actually this weekend. I think, what is it, Monday, Tuesday?
You're
It
such
has
an
to be done
optimist.
Tuesday. Well, I'm thinking it'll wrap up. Constitutional deadline's May 19th, I believe
The
that's
session will
Tuesday.
adjourn on May 18th. It may
Yeah.
reconvene on May 19th.
18th. Sine die, that's what they call it at the end of
Yeah.
at the end of the session where they adjourn and they're good. You don't see extra innings. That's not politically tenable.
I predict extra innings.
You do, really? You think we're
Absolutely.
going to get an extra session?
I think you'll have time to do the next show right here. And look at
Well,
your
let me
people and
ask
say,
you
get
that.
involved.
Well, that's interesting because I guess there's a little time before the next election. So if you were going to do it, this would be the year to create some noise.
Well, they're so far apart, and there's actually logistical time it takes
Yeah.
just to prepare the bills and to get them amended through committee, and then you have to do the revisor time.
Oh,
And they have to
interesting.
go on the
Yeah.
floor. And remember, it's not Mr. Thiessen's job to make Mr. Doubt look good.
Right.
And so you don't know what mischief can lurk under the guise of good government.
Yeah, but none of them, it doesn't bode well for any of them to go into an extra session.
Uh,
There's always going to be blame.
For Mr. Hand and Mr. Thiessen, a special session benefits them.
Mm,
Because you want to
yeah.
throw out the bums who couldn't run the place.
I see.
Those nasty incumbents. If it wasn't for the incumbents,
You mean the Republicans in the House?
so
And the
Thiessen-
Democrats in the Senate?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Isn't that curious? Would that be funny if they flipped the opposite way?
It's possible.
Nobody expects that. But
No.
The House is at risk probably, but the
Yeah.
Senate isn't likely to change. But you never know.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of politics, which back to my point is, it's important that you're involved in politics because it belongs to you. You decide who will win. You, them.
Oh, not
Who will-
Simone.
well-
She's one voice, yeah.
They don't know Simone's there. Shh. But
All
they
right.
decide who's going to win a year from November
That's right.
by those who vote and who don't vote. So please vote.
Okay, yeah, and don't forget to tune in next week. We'll see you then.